It's Friday. Happy day 14. Give yourself 2 claps if you stuck it out every day this week. This has been one of our most challenging weeks. However, I'm so proud of those of you who have stuck to it, who are giving it your all, and making every effort to get the work done. It's the end of week 3, y'all. Let's have some fun today.
Because I'm happy. Clap along if you feel like a room without a roof. Because I'm happy. Clap along if you feel like happiness is the truth. Because I'm happy.
Kenneth has been the master of percentages all week. Let's take a look at my favorite question involving Fernando. So Fernando bought a jacket. It was $185. Marisol buys the same jacket, but she pays 20% less at a different department store. What I loved about Kenneth's approach to solving this problem is that he only focused on the information he needed to answer the question. Yes, there are a lot of different components in this story, but he only focused on how much Fernando paid, how much Marisol paid, and ignored all the other information in there. That tells me that Kenneth paid attention to the text details. So when he went to calculate his answer, he used those details to drive his thinking, to drive his calculating. And in the end, he made all the right steps, including finding 20% or 20 hundredths times 185, and then subtracting that amount from Fernando's total. Remember, percents are fractions of a number. So in the end, you will have to do some sort of decimal or fraction multiplication to get your answer. Let's take a look at a question Avante did really well on. Faye has 5 pieces of ribbon, each 1 yard long. She cuts each ribbon into 6. A, how many 6 will she have after cutting all the ribbons? And then B, how long will each 6 be in inches? Since Avante had multiple tasks to do for this particular question, it was really important for him to rely on modeling, and that's exactly what he ended up doing. Using models gave Avante an advantage. By drawing each ribbon, he was then able to see, okay, how do I show 6 here? Partitioning the pictures, counting, using those methods gave him the opportunity to identify exactly what type of math was happening. Using partitions and then shading and counting the individual parts gave Avante the leverage to then say, hey, this is actually whole number by fraction division. This is 5 divided by 1/6. 5 divided by 1/6 is 30. From there, he's able to move on to part B. Part B is asking for the length of each 6 in inches. Well, right now, everything is in yards. Avante, being the smart kid that he is, understands that yards and inches aren't the same thing, so a conversion needs to take place. And by converting 1/6 yard, by multiplying by 36, converts yards to inches. Avante is true inspiration for why we should definitely rely on models when problem solving. Jackson definitely surprised me with the move he made this week. Let's take a look at Sal. Sal bought a house for $78,524.60. 12 years later, he sold the house for 2 3/4 times as much. What was the sale price of the house? What impressed me about Jackson's work is how he strategized. So he identified the correct operation to use to solve this problem, but more specifically, Jackson understood that I have 2 different types of numbers here. And because I have 2 different types of numbers or 2 different forms of these numbers, I need to be strategic about what mathematical step I use to do this multiplication. For Jackson, that meant creating an expression that showed 2 decimal numbers. And from there, he's able to follow through with decimal multiplication using a strategy that we've learned in class. Using organization, Jackson calculated not only a reasonable answer, he calculated an accurate one. And that's the goal. We want to use strategies that are going to help us not only be reasonable, but be accurate. Take a look at how he rewrote 2 and 3/4 as 2 and 75/100. Those are equivalent values. Also take a look at how he took his expression and turned those decimal numbers into unit form. So now he can do whole number multiplication and then apply the unit towards the end. An important lesson we can learn from Jackson's work is choosing the right form of numbers can give us the best results. Juan showed a lot of confidence this week. Let's take a look at his question. A company uses a sketch to plan an advertisement on the side of a building. The lettering of the sketch is 3/4 inch tall. In the actual advertisement, the letters must be 34 times as tall. How tall will the letters be on the building? Taquan identified immediately that this was a multiplication story and dived right in with an expression. What's great is that he remembered that multiplication, especially when you're dealing with a whole number, is a process of repetition, making copies. So he knew that, oh, I'm going to be making 34 copies of 3/4. He knew to keep the unit the same and make copies of the numerator. So 34 times 3/4 is 102/4. He then went through the process of changing that improper fraction 102/4 into a mixed number of 25 and 1/2 using the process of division. Yes, there was a lot of success this week, but we can't let Fun Friday go by without identifying one of my favorite mistakes. Thank you, fourth grade. Let's talk punch. Carol made punch. She used 12 and 3/8 cups of juice and then added 3 times as much ginger ale. Then she added 1 cup of lemonade. How many cups of punch did her recipe make? Here's my favorite mistake. Take a look. Can you identify exactly what went wrong here and why? There's some good stuff happening, but the thinking and the calculating are incomplete and inaccurate. Let's correct the thinking here first by collecting all of the information from the text that we actually need. We're making punch, so we need all of the ingredients that are used to make this punch. That includes juice, ginger ale, and lemonade. Never forget that you need the information before you can start calculating. So once we get our juice, once we get our lemonade, and once we have our ginger ale, we then can follow through on all of the necessary steps to get the numbers we need. Well, the text gives us the amount of juice. The text gives us the amount of lemonade. The text does not give us the ginger ale. So that becomes our first step in calculating. Once we calculate the ginger ale, we will then have all 3 parts of the picture. Once we have all 3 parts, we're able to calculate the total cups of punch by adding. Success with multi-step problems like these require planning and reasoning. Take the time to decide what information you need before calculating. Through my grading and observations this week, it's clear that many of you are becoming more thoughtful and intentional about how you actually problem solve. As your teacher, I couldn't be more proud. The fact that some of you are taking your time, being more strategic about how you approach the problems I give you, means that you are growing. And that's what makes you mathematicians, your willingness to take risks and grow. When solving word problems, remember, it's about the information. Yes, you will have to calculate to solve the problem, but your calculations shouldn't come before you actually think deeply about what the information means, what the text means, and how all those variables are connected. Without making connections and identifying patterns, your calculations won't make any sense. Assess the reasonableness of your work. Ask yourself, is my thinking reasonable? can it be supported by the text? Is what I'm thinking what's in the story? And then 2, think about the calculations that you're using. Do your calculations show the right relationships? Do they make the right connections to the text? Once you've assessed the reasonableness of your thinking and the reasonableness of your expressions or calculations, then think about accuracy, because this is math after all. If your answers aren't accurate, none of your math work matters. So your precision has to be a priority in every math problem that you have. Head on over to Socrative now. Take what you've learned from your peers and apply it. Go do some good work.